The cold metal table felt like ice against So Young's skin. She had been lying here for 3 hours now, waiting for the next test to begin. The aliens called themselves Valdrians, and they loved their tests. Every day brought something new. More pain, more questions, more ways to see what would break her. Dr. He-jin walked into the white room with his usual calm face. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. His white coat was always perfectly clean. So Young had learned to hate that coat more than anything else in this place. "Good morning, Subject 247, he said in his flat voice. The Valdrians had given her a number instead of using her name. They said names made them think of the test subjects as people, and people were harder to cut open. So Young said nothing. She had stopped talking to them months ago. There was no point. They never listened anyway. They just wrote down everything. She said in their little computers and used it to hurt her more. "Today we will test your pain response again," Dr. He-jin said. He picked up a small device that looked like a metal stick. "We want to see how much you can take before you pass. Out!" The machine started making its terrible sound. So Young felt the pain shoot through her body like fire. She bit down on her teeth and tried not to scream. The Valdrians always got excited when she screamed. She would not give them that today. As the pain got worse, So Young let her mind go somewhere else. She thought about Earth, about her home, in the mountains. She remembered her mother making soup on cold days. She remembered running through the forest with her dog when she was little. These memories helped her stay strong. Dr. He-jin turned up the machine. The pain was so bad that So Young could taste blood in her mouth, but she did not scream. She just stared at the ceiling and thought about home. "Interesting," Dr. He-jin said to his helper. She should have passed out by now. Make a note that humans can handle 300% more pain than we first thought. After the pain test, they moved So Young to another room. This one had big windows that looked out at the alien city. She could see tall buildings made of some kind of glowing metal. Flying cars moved between them like tiny birds. Sometimes she wondered what it would be like to walk in those streets as a free person. But So Young was not free. She was a prisoner, taken from her ship 3 years ago when Earth first met the Valdrians. The meeting had not gone well. The aliens had pretended to be friendly, but they were just looking for new things to study. Humans were very interesting to them. "Your people are strange," Dr. He-jin had told her once. "Most species give up when things get hard, but humans just get angry and fight harder. We want to know why." So Young had learned a lot about the Valdrians during her time here. They were an old race that had stopped growing long ago. Their scientists had made them all the same, with no differences between them. They never got sick, never felt real pain, and never had to fight for anything. This made them weak in ways they did not understand. That was why they needed to study other species. They wanted to learn how to be strong again. The problem was that they did not understand that strength came from the very things they had thrown away: fear, pain, hope, and the will to keep fighting when everything looked hopeless. In the evening, So Young was put back in her small cell. The walls were white metal, and there was just a bed, a toilet, and a small window, but this cell was special. So Young had been working on it for months. She had found a loose screw in the wall near her bed. Every night she used her fingernails to turn it a little bit more. It had taken forever, but now the whole panel was almost free. Behind it were wires and tubes that controlled things in the building. So Young had also been watching the guards. They followed the same pattern every night. At exactly 10 o'clock, they would change shifts. For 3 minutes, no one would be watching her door. 3 minutes was not much time, but it might be enough. She had been listening to the Valdrians talk for 3 years. They thought she did not understand their language, but she had learned it all. She knew about their plans to capture more humans. She knew about Project Ascension, where they wanted to take what made humans strong and put it into their own bodies. Most important, she knew where they kept the computer files that showed how to find Earth. If those files got into the wrong hands, her people would never be safe. Tonight was different. Dr. Jin had said something that made So Young's blood run cold. He told his helper that she was the last test subject they needed. Tomorrow, they would start the real work. Ships would go to Earth and bring back thousands of humans for their experiments. So Young could not let that happen. When the lights went out, she waited. She counted the seconds in her head. The guards walked by her door one last time, their heavy boots making noise on the metal floor. Then, silence. So Young pulled the loose panel from the wall. Behind it was a mess of colored wires and small tubes. She had been studying this area for weeks, learning what each wire did. The red ones controlled the door locks. The blue ones were for the alarm system. The yellow ones powered the cameras. First, she cut the yellow wires. The cameras in. Her cell went dark. Then she carefully connected two red wires together. Her door made a soft click sound as it unlocked. So Young pushed the door open and looked out into the hall. It was empty and dark. Emergency lights made red shadows on the walls. She had memorized the map of this place from watching the guards and doctors walk around. She knew exactly where she needed to go. The computer room was 3 floors up and down 2 halls. That was where they kept all their important files. If she could get there and steal the information, she might be able to warn Earth and save her people. So Young began to move through the dark halls. She was no longer just a test subject. She was a soldier again, and she had work to do. The Valdrians had made one big mistake. They had taught her everything about their weaknesses while trying to find her strengths. Now it was time to show them what humans could really do when they had nothing left to lose. So Young moved through the dark halls like a ghost. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold metal floor. Every few steps, she stopped to listen. The building was mostly quiet, but she could hear machines humming in the walls and air moving through. Big tubes above her head. She knew this place better than the Valdrians thought. During her 3 years here, they had moved her to different rooms for different tests. Each time she watched everything. She counted steps, memorized turns, and learned where every door led. The aliens thought she was just a scared prisoner, but she was studying them just like they studied her. The computer room was on the 5th floor. So Young found the stairs and began to climb. Her legs were weak from being on the table all day, but she pushed herself to keep going. She had to reach that room before the guards found out she was gone. On the 3rd floor, she heard voices. 2 guards were talking near the elevator. So Young pressed herself against the wall and listened. They were complaining about working the night shift and how boring it was to watch sleeping prisoners. "Nothing ever happens here," one guard said. "These test subjects just lie in their cells all day. Dr. Jin says the human one is special," the other guard replied. "Something about her brain being different from the others." So Young smiled in the dark. If only they knew how different. She waited until the guards moved away, then continued up the stairs. On the 4th floor, she stopped. This was where they kept the other test subjects. So Young had heard their voices sometimes, crying or screaming during the worst experiments. She had always wondered who they were. The smart thing would be to go straight to the computer room. But So Young could not leave without trying to help the others. She knew what it felt like to be trapped and hurt every day. If she could free even one person, it would be worth the risk. The first cell she checked held a human man. He was sleeping on a small bed, his face covered with old bruises. So Young quietly opened his door, using the same wire trick she had learned. "Wake up," she whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. The man opened his eyes and started to sit up quickly, but So Young put her hand over his mouth. "I am human like you," she said softly. "My name is So Young. We need to get out of here." The man nodded. When she moved her hand, he whispered back, "I am Wu Bin. I have been here for 2 years. How did you escape?" I learned their language and studied their machines, So Young said. Can you walk? Wu Bin stood up slowly. He was thin and weak, but his eyes were clear and angry. I can do whatever it takes to get out of this place. Together they moved to the next cell. Inside was a human woman with short black hair and intelligent eyes. She was already awake and watching them. You took long enough, the woman said quietly. I have been waiting for someone to make a move. I am Minna. You knew we were coming? So Young asked. I heard the door locks clicking off one by one, Minna said. I used to be an engineer before they caught me. I know the sound those machines make. So Young liked her already. We are going to the computer room to steal their files. Then we need to find a way off this planet. The computer room is protected by 3 different security systems, Minna said. But if you got this far, maybe you know something I do not. They found 2 more humans and 3 aliens from other species in the remaining cells. All of them were weak from the experiments, but all of them wanted to fight. So, Young explained her plan as they moved toward the stairs. The main computer holds information about Earth's location, she said. If we can steal it and send a warning, maybe our people can prepare for what is coming. What about getting off this planet? Asked one of the aliens, a creature with purple. Skin and 4 arms, 1 step at a time, So Young said. First we get the information, then we find a ship. They reached the 5th floor and found the computer room. The door was locked with 3 different systems, just like Minna had said. But So Young had watched Dr. Hai Jin enter this room many times. She knew the codes. The first lock needed a handprint. So, Young had seen the doctor place his hand on the scanner, and she had memorized exactly where his fingers went. Valdrian hands were different from human hands, but the scanner was not very smart. She spread her fingers wide and pressed her hand against the reader. The scanner beeped and turned green. The second lock needed a number code. So Young had watched Dr. Hai Jin type this code many times. His fingers always moved in the same pattern. 4 numbers, then a pause, then 3 more numbers. She entered the code, 4.872, pause, 1.5,9. The second lock opened. The third lock was different. It scanned the person's eyes to make sure they were Valdrian. This one would be harder to trick. I have an idea, Minna said. She pulled a small piece of metal from her pocket. I stole this from my cell. It is very shiny. She held the metal up to the scanner at just the right angle. The light from the scanner bounced off the metal and back into the machine. The scanner got confused and thought it was seeing Valdrian eyes. The third lock opened. Inside the computer room, dozens of screens showed information about the research facility. So Young found the main computer and began looking through the files. Her hands shook as she saw the terrible things the Valdrians had planned. Project Ascension was worse than she had thought. They wanted to capture 10,000 humans and experiment on them until they found a way to steal human strength and put it into Valdrian bodies. The files showed pictures of Earth and lists of human cities they planned to attack. We need to copy all of this, So Young said, and we need to send a message to Earth. Wu Bin was looking at another screen. They have a communication system that can reach anywhere in the galaxy. If we can break into it, we can warn everyone. Suddenly, loud sirens began to wail throughout the building. Red lights flashed on and off. A voice spoke over the building's speaker system in the Valdrian language. Attention all units. Test subjects have escaped from level 4. Search all areas immediately. Use extreme force. They found the empty cells, Minna said. How much more time do you need? So Young's fingers flew over the computer controls. She copied the files about Earth's location onto a small data card. Then she began typing a message to send to every human ship in space. This is Lee So Young, captured Marine from Earth Defense Force. I am sending you the location of a Valdrian research facility on planet Valdris Prime. They are planning to attack Earth with a massive force. They have been experimenting on humans for 3 years. They are weak and afraid of us, But they have advanced technology. Prepare for war. Do not trust them. Fight with everything you have. She sent the message just as the door to the computer room exploded inward. Commander Tejo stood in the doorway with 6 guards, all of them pointing weapons at the escaped prisoners. "Step away from the computers," Tejo ordered. "You are all going back to your cells." So Young looked at the data, card in her hand. All the information Earth needed was stored on this tiny piece of metal. But between her and freedom stood 7 armed Valdrian soldiers. She looked at her fellow prisoners. They were all weak and tired, but they were ready to fight. These aliens had hurt them for years, and now they had a chance to hurt back. "I do not think we are going back to any cells," So Young said. She smiled at Commander Tejo. "I think it is time you learned what humans can do when you make us angry." Emperor Seok-jin sat on his golden throne and tried not to show his worry. The message from Commander Tejo had arrived an hour ago, and it still made no sense. 7 test subjects had escaped from the research facility. That should have been easy to fix. But somehow, these prisoners had killed 12 guards, stolen a military ship, and disappeared into space. "How is this possible?" the Emperor asked his council. "They were weak prisoners locked in cells. How did they defeat trained soldiers?" General Suho stepped forward. He was the Emperor's best military leader, but even he looked confused. "The prisoners used the facility's own systems against the guards. They turned off the lights, locked doors, and even made the air poisonous in some areas. The human female seemed to know our technology better than our own people." "One human woman did all this?" Emperor Seok-jin could not believe it. "Not just any human," said Dr. He-jin through the communication screen. He was still at the research facility, looking embarrassed and worried. Subject 247 was special. We had been testing her for 3 years. She must have been learning from us the whole time. The Emperor felt a cold fear in his chest. The Valdrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years because they were careful and smart. They studied every enemy before fighting them. But somehow this one human had turned their own methods against them. "What did she steal?" the Emperor asked. Dr. He-jin's face went pale. "Everything, Your Majesty. The location of Earth, our military codes, details about Project Ascension. She also sent a message to human forces across the galaxy." "What did the message say?" "She warned them about our plans to attack Earth. She told them we were weak and afraid. She gave them our location." Emperor Seok-jin stood up from his throne. For the first time in his long life, he felt real fear. The Valdrians had spent centuries avoiding direct wars because they knew other species were stronger fighters. They won through tricks and technology, not through battles. "Send Admiral Hyun-soo to hunt down this escaped ship," the Emperor ordered. "Use whatever force is necessary." But even as he spoke, more bad news was arriving. Reports came in from across the Empire. Human resistance groups that had been quiet for years were suddenly attacking Valdrian bases. They moved with new knowledge and better plans. Somehow they seemed to know exactly where to hit. On the planet Nexus, humans destroyed a weapons factory that the Valdrians thought was secret. On Croter Station, human fighters broke free from a prison ship and took over the entire facility. Everywhere the Valdrians looked, humans were fighting back with skills they should not have had. "They are acting like they know our weaknesses," General Suho reported. "These attacks are too well planned to be coincidence." The Emperor realized the truth. The escaped human had not just stolen information. She had learned the Valdrian way of thinking during her 3 years in the laboratory. Now she was teaching other humans how to fight them. Admiral Hyun-soo arrived at the palace 3 days later. He was the Empire's greatest space commander, a Valdrian who had never lost a battle. His fleet had chased the stolen ship across 5 star systems, but they could not catch it. "She flies like she built the ship herself," Admiral Hyun-soo told the Emperor. Every time we get close, she does something impossible. She makes our own technology work in ways we never thought of. How? Can one human be so dangerous? The Emperor asked. Because we made her that way, Admiral Hyun-soo said quietly. Our experiments did not just test her body and mind. They taught her everything about us. She knows how we think, how we fight, and how we fail. The Emperor felt sick. The Valdrians had created their own worst enemy. Meanwhile, So Young's stolen ship flew through the dark space between stars. She had named it the Unbroken Spirit because that was what the Valdrians could never take from her. The ship's computers were full of Valdrian technology, and So Young was learning to use all of it. Woo-bin worked in the engine room, making the ship faster and stronger. Min-ah studied the communication systems, staying in contact with human resistance groups across the galaxy. The other freed prisoners helped where they could, all of them united by their hatred of the Valdrians and their desire for freedom. We have a problem, Min-ah reported from the communication room. Admiral Hyun-soo's fleet is getting closer. His ships are faster than ours. So Young smiled. She had been waiting for this. During her years in the laboratory, she had learned that Valdrians always did the same things. They followed rules and patterns because it made them feel safe. But patterns could be broken. Set course for the Nebula of Ghosts, So Young ordered. Maximum speed. That nebula is full of electrical storms, Woo-bin said. Our ship could be destroyed. Valdrian ships could be destroyed, So Young corrected him. But I have been making changes to our ship. We are going to do something Admiral Hyun-soo will never expect. The Nebula of Ghosts was a huge cloud of gas and energy that ships usually flew around. The electrical storms inside could destroy most computers and engines, but So Young had spent weeks modifying their ship using human engineering ideas that the Valdrians never thought of. When Admiral Hyun-soo's fleet followed them into the nebula, they found themselves flying blind. Their sensors stopped working. Their weapons would not fire. Their engines began to fail, but So Young's ship flew through the storms like they were not there. She had used human creativity to solve problems that Valdrian technology could not handle. While the Admiral's ship struggled to survive, So Young escaped to the other side of the nebula. This is impossible, Admiral Hyun-soo said to his crew. No ship can fly through those storms. Human ships can, his second-in-command replied. They think differently than we do. When So Young's ship emerged from the nebula, she found something wonderful waiting for her. A fleet of human ships had gathered at the meeting point she had suggested in her message. Captains she had never met were ready to follow her because she had proven that the Valdrians could be beaten. Admiral So Young, one of the captains said over the communication system. We have been waiting for someone to show us how to fight back. Tell us what you need. So Young looked at the stars around her. Somewhere out there, the Valdrian Empire was preparing for war. They thought they were strong because they had better technology and more ships. But they had made one big mistake. They had taught a human how to think like them, and now that human was going to teach other humans how to beat them. We are going to take this war to their home planets, So Young told her new fleet. We are going to show them that some things are worth fighting for and some cages can never hold us. The war for the galaxy was about to begin, and the Valdrians had already lost their most important battle. They had lost the battle for So Young's mind. 6 months had passed since So Young escaped from the research facility. The galaxy was now divided into two sides, the Valdrian Empire that had ruled for 1,000 years, and the growing alliance of free worlds that followed a former test subject. So Young stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the battle reports come in from across the galaxy. Her forces had taken 12 star systems from the Valdrians. More importantly, they had freed hundreds of research facilities where aliens from many species had been trapped and tortured. Admiral, we have a message from Emperor Seok-jin, Min-ah reported from the communication station. He wants to meet with you to discuss peace. So Young almost laughed. The Emperor, who had ordered her torture, now wanted to talk about peace. But she knew this could be useful. The Valdrians were losing the war, and their leaders were getting desperate. "Tell him I will meet him at Neutral Station Beta," So Young said. "No weapons, no guards, just him and me." Wubin looked worried. It could be a trap. The Valdrians do not usually ask for meetings unless they are planning something bad. "Everything is a trap," So Young replied. "But sometimes you have to walk into the trap to spring your own." Neutral Station Beta was a small trading post between Valdrian and human space. It was owned by a species called the Zentari, who never took sides in galactic wars. They just wanted to sell things to everyone and make money. So Young arrived at the station with only Minna and Wubin. She wore her simple military uniform with no decorations or fancy symbols. She wanted the Emperor to see her as she really was, a soldier, not a politician. Emperor Seokjin was waiting in the station's main meeting room. He was tall and thin like all Valdrians, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. He wore a golden robe covered with jewels that probably cost more than most people's homes. 2 advisors stood behind him, but no guards. "So you are the famous Subject 247, the Emperor said as So Young entered the room. "You look smaller than I expected." "I look exactly the same as when your people were cutting me open every day," So Young replied. "The difference is that now I can cut back." The Emperor's advisors looked uncomfortable, but the Emperor himself just smiled. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble. My military leaders tell me you are impossible to defeat." "Your military? Leaders are learning what humans have always known," So Young said. "Freedom is worth dying for. Your people forgot that a long time ago." "Freedom is an interesting word," the Emperor said. "My people are free from hunger, free from disease, free from the chaos that comes with too many choices. We have built a perfect society." So Young sat down across from the Emperor. "You built a prison and called it paradise. That is why you are losing this war. You cannot understand why people would fight against perfection." "Then help me understand," the Emperor said. "I am prepared to offer you anything you want. Your own planet to rule, technology beyond your dreams, even a place in my government. Just call off your rebellion and help me restore order." "I do not want to rule planets," So Young said. "I want to free the people on those planets so they can rule themselves." The Emperor looked confused. This was not how negotiations usually went. Most people wanted power or money or status, but So Young just wanted something the Valdrians had never understood: the right to choose. "You cannot free everyone," the Emperor argued. "Most species are too primitive to govern themselves. They need guidance, structure, control. Without the Empire, there would be chaos. Without the Empire, there would be choice," So Young corrected him. "Some people might make bad choices, but they would be their own choices. That is better than having good choices made for them by others." So Young stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see ships from dozens of different species docked at the station. All of them were different sizes and shapes, built by people with different ideas about how things should work. "Look at this station," So Young said. "The Zentari do not control what ships can dock here or what people can buy and sell. But somehow, everything works. People trade, make deals, solve problems, and go home happy. No empire needed." "And when there are disputes?" the Emperor asked. "When people cannot agree? Then they argue, fight, make up, and find a solution that works for everyone. It is messy and loud and sometimes unfair, but it is real." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised So Young. "I have seen the reports from the worlds you have liberated. Crime is down, trade is up, and people seem happier. How is this possible without central control?" "Because people want to be good," So Young said. "They want to help each other and build better lives. They just need the freedom to try." "But what about the research programs?" the Emperor asked. Project Ascension could help my people become strong again. We could share that strength with everyone. So Young's eyes went cold. Your research programs torture innocent people. You steal their strength instead of building your own. That is not sharing. That is theft. The test subjects volunteer. I volunteered for nothing. So Young slammed her hand on the table. You captured me, caged me, and hurt me for 3 years. You did the same thing to thousands of others. That is not research. That is evil. The Emperor looked genuinely surprised. But our records show that all test subjects were volunteers who agreed to help advance galactic science. So Young realized something terrible. The Emperor actually believed what he was saying. The Valdrians had lied to themselves for so long that they could not see the truth anymore. Your records are wrong, So Young said quietly. Every person in those laboratories was a prisoner. Every experiment was torture. Every day was hell. She pulled out a small data device and placed it on the table. This contains video files from your own security cameras. Watch them. See what your perfect society really does to innocent people. The Emperor picked up the device with shaking hands. For the first time, So Young saw fear in his large black eyes. If this is true, the Emperor said slowly, then my empire is built on a foundation of lies. Yes, So Young said. It is. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The Emperor was quiet for a long time. His advisors whispered to him in the Valdrian language, but he waved them away. Finally, he looked up at So Young. I cannot stop the research programs, he said. Too many people depend on them. Too much of our technology comes from what we learn. If I shut them down, my government would collapse. Then your government should collapse, So Young said. Some things are more important than stability. You ask me to destroy everything my people have built for 1,000 years. I ask you to stop torturing innocent people, So Young replied. If your civilization cannot survive without causing pain to others, then it does not deserve to survive. The Emperor stood up slowly. His golden robe seemed heavy on his thin shoulders. I cannot give you what you want, he said. My duty is to my people, not to yours. So Young nodded. She had expected this answer, but she had needed to hear it for herself. Then we have nothing more to talk about, she said. When I leave this station, the war continues, and it will continue until every research facility is destroyed and every prisoner is free. You cannot win, the Emperor said. My empire has 1,000 worlds and millions of ships. So Young smiled as she walked toward the door. Your empire has 1,000 worlds full of people who are tired of being controlled. When they see that freedom is possible, they will choose it, and you cannot fight everyone. As she left the meeting room, So Young activated a hidden transmitter in her uniform. The conversation had been broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Now everyone knew that the Emperor would not stop the torture programs voluntarily. The war would continue, but now it was not just about military victory. It was about showing the galaxy that some things were worth fighting for, even if the fight seemed impossible to win. The broadcast of So Young's meeting with Emperor Seok Jin spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On every Valdrian world, people watched their emperor admit that the research programs were real. They heard him refuse to stop the torture of innocent beings. They saw a former test subject offer peace and watched their leader choose war instead. Dr. Gay-In was working late in her laboratory on Valdris Prime when she saw the broadcast. She had helped design some of the experiments that So Young had survived. At the time, she had believed the official reports that said all test subjects were volunteers. Now she knew the truth. The small human woman on the screen had been tortured for 3 years, and Dr. Gayan had been part of it. The knowledge made her sick to her stomach. She looked around her clean, white laboratory and saw it for what it really was, a torture chamber. Dr. Gayan was not the only Valdrian who felt this way. Across the empire, people began to question everything they had been told. If the government lied about the research programs, what else were they lying about? And the planet Xerion, Governor Taemin received emergency orders from the capital. He was supposed to arrest anyone who had watched the illegal broadcast and send them to re-education camps. But Governor Taemin had watched the broadcast too. He had seen the pain in So Young's eyes when she talked about her time in the laboratory. Instead of following orders, Governor Taemin called a meeting of all the citizens in his city. Standing before 10,000 people, he made an announcement that changed everything. "I will not arrest you for wanting to know the truth," he said. "I will not punish you for having a conscience. As of today, Xerion is withdrawing from the Valdrian Empire. We choose freedom." The crowd cheered so loudly that the sound could be heard in space. Similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Governors, military commanders, and ordinary citizens decided they could not support an empire built on lies and torture. Some planets declared independence. Others simply stopped following orders from the capital. Emperor Seok-jin watched his empire crumble from his golden throne. Every day brought news of more defections, more rebellions, more worlds choosing So Young's alliance over his rule. "How can they betray everything we have built?" he asked General Suho. "They are not betraying anything," the general replied quietly. "They are choosing to believe in something better." "You sound like you support them," the emperor said dangerously. General Suho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I have served the Empire for 40 years. I believed we were bringing order to the galaxy. But if order requires torture, then maybe chaos is better." The Emperor felt truly alone for the first time in his life. Even his most loyal supporters were beginning to doubt. Meanwhile, So Young's forces grew stronger every day. Ships from the defecting Valdrian worlds joined her fleet. Planets that had been under Imperial control for centuries welcomed her forces as liberators instead of conquerors. Most importantly, Admiral Hyun-soo himself requested a private meeting with So Young, the Valdrian naval commander who had chased her across the galaxy. Now wanted to talk. They met on a small moon between the two fleets. Admiral Hyun-soo came alone as So Young had requested. He was an old Valdrian with scars on his face from battles fought long ago. "I have been a soldier for 50 years, Admiral Hyun-soo told So Young. "I have won every battle I ever fought, but I have never fought for anything I truly believed in until now." "What do you believe in now?" So Young asked. "I believe that no one should suffer the way you suffered," the Admiral said. "I believe that strength comes from protecting others, not from hurting them. I believe that you are right, and my Emperor is wrong." Admiral Hyun-soo pulled out his military rank insignia and threw them on the ground. "I offer you my fleet and my loyalty, not because I fear you, but because I respect what you are fighting for." So Young picked up the insignia and handed them back to the Admiral. "Keep these. I need you to remain who you are, a military leader who fights for justice. Your rank comes from your actions, not from any government." With Admiral Hyun-soo's defection, So Young gained access to half of the Valdrian Navy. More importantly, she gained the loyalty of thousands of Valdrian soldiers who had been having doubts about the war. Dr. Ga-in also joined So Young's cause, bringing with her detailed information about all the research facilities in the galaxy. She helped plan rescue missions to free the remaining test subjects and worked to develop treatments for the victims of Valdrian experiments. "I cannot undo what I helped do to you," Dr. Ga-in told So Young during one of their planning meetings. "But I can spend the rest of my life trying to heal the damage." "Healing is more important than revenge," So Young replied. "The people in those facilities need help, not more pain." As So Young's alliance grew stronger, the Valdrian Empire grew weaker. Entire sectors stopped sending taxes to the capital. Trade routes collapsed as worlds chose to deal with the Free Alliance instead of the Empire. The central government found itself controlling fewer and fewer planets each week. Emperor Seok-jin's remaining advisors urged him to use the Empire's ultimate weapon, a device that could destroy entire star systems. But the Emperor knew that using such a weapon would prove So-young's point about the Empire being evil. If we destroy those worlds, we become the monsters she says we are, the Emperor told his war council. We already are monsters, Admiral Hyun-Soo's replacement said. The question is whether we want to be defeated monsters or victorious ones. But victory was looking less and less possible. So-young's forces had surrounded the Valdrian home system. Her ships filled the space around Valdris Prime like angry stars. On the planet below, citizens gathered in the streets to watch the alien fleet that had come to free them. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Valdrian Empire was about to fall. And it was falling not to superior technology or greater numbers, but to an idea that was stronger than any weapon. The idea that all people deserved to be free. So-young stood on the bridge of her flagship and looked down at the planet where she had been tortured for 3 years. Soon she would return to the place of her greatest pain to deliver the greatest victory of her life. Admiral, Minna reported from the communication station. We are receiving surrender offers from 17 different Valdrian commanders. They want to negotiate terms. Tell them there is only one term, So-young said. Complete surrender and the immediate closure of all research facilities. Everything else we can discuss after the suffering stops. The girl who had been strapped to a laboratory table was about to become the woman who freed the galaxy. But she had not forgotten the lesson she learned in that terrible place. Power was only good if it was used to protect others. The final battle was about to begin, and So-young already knew how it would end. Not with the destruction of her enemies, but with the creation of something better than what came before. The final battle for Valdris Prime was unlike any war the galaxy had ever seen. So-young's fleet surrounded the planet. But instead of attacking cities and killing civilians, they targeted only military bases and government buildings. Her soldiers fought with precision and mercy, capturing enemies instead of destroying them whenever possible. Emperor Seok-jin watched from his palace as his capital fell around him. His remaining loyal forces fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. More importantly, they were fighting for a cause they no longer believed in. General Suho stood beside the emperor in the throne room as explosions echoed through the palace corridors. The sounds of battle were getting closer. Your Majesty, General Suho said quietly, perhaps it is time to consider surrender. Our people are suffering for nothing. I will not surrender to a test subject, the emperor replied angrily. I am the ruler of 1,000 worlds. I do not bow to escaped prisoners. She is no longer a prisoner, General Suho observed. She is a leader who commands the loyalty of half the galaxy. Maybe we should ask ourselves why. Before the emperor could answer, the throne room doors exploded inward. So-young walked through the smoke and debris, followed by Min-ah, Woo-bin, and a small group of soldiers from many different species. She wore the same simple military uniform she had worn during their first meeting, with no crown or royal symbols. Hello, Your Majesty, So-young said calmly. We meet again. The emperor's few remaining guards raised their weapons, but General Suho held up his hand. Lower your weapons, the general ordered. This battle is over. Emperor Seok-jin looked around his destroyed throne room. Golden decorations lay scattered on the floor. Ancient tapestries burned in the corners. The symbol of his power was in ruins, just like his empire. You have won, the emperor said to So-young. What happens now? Will you kill me like I deserve? So-young walked slowly across the throne room until she stood directly in front of the golden throne. For a moment, she just looked at it, the seat of power that had controlled the galaxy for 1,000 years through fear and lies. I did not come here to kill you, So-young said. I came here to end the suffering you caused. Your death would not bring back the people who died in your laboratories. "Then what do you want?" the Emperor asked. "I want you to see what you built," So Young replied. She gestured to her diverse group of followers. "You tried to create perfect subjects by torturing us. Instead, you created a family of people who understand that strength comes from protecting each other." Dr. Gayen stepped forward from So Young's group. The Emperor recognized her as one of his former scientists. "Your Majesty," Dr. Gayen said, "I helped design the experiments that were performed on So Young and thousands of others. I believed the lies about voluntary subjects and scientific advancement. But I have seen the truth now. We were torturers, not researchers." The Emperor looked confused. But the reports said all subjects were volunteers. The data showed incredible scientific progress. "The reports were lies," So Young said simply. "Your government lied to you, just like it lied to everyone else. You became so isolated in your palace that you forgot what reality looked like." Admiral Hyun-soo entered the throne room and approached the Emperor. The old military commander looked sad as he removed his ceremonial sword and placed it on the ground. "I served the Empire faithfully for 50 years, Admiral Hyun-soo said, "but I cannot serve a lie anymore. The true strength of our people was not in our technology or our control. It was in our ability to choose what was right." Emperor Seokjin sat down heavily on his throne. For the first time, he looked like what he really was, an old, tired man who had been fooled by his own propaganda. "If everything I built was wrong," the Emperor said slowly, "then what should replace it?" So Young smiled. "Nothing should replace it. That is the point. People do not need emperors or empires. They just need the freedom to choose their own path." "But without central authority, there will be chaos," the Emperor protested. "Different worlds will fight each other. Trade will collapse. Pirates will raid helpless planets." "Some of that might happen," So Young agreed. "But people will also work together to solve those problems. They will form alliances, create trade agreements, and build defense forces. The difference is that they will choose to do these things instead of being forced." Mina stepped forward with a datapad in her hands. "We have been in contact with representatives from over 800 worlds. They want to form a voluntary association called the Free Alliance. No central government, no emperor, just cooperation between equals." "How can that possibly work?" the Emperor asked. "The same way this station worked where we first met," So Young explained. "Different people with different ideas, all working together because it benefits everyone. It is messy and complicated, but it is real." Wu Bin activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Most of the former Valdrian worlds were already cooperating with each other without any central command. Trade was actually increasing as worlds were free to make their own deals. "Look at your former empire," Wu Bin said. "People are not destroying each other. They are building something better." The Emperor studied the display for a long time. Finally, he asked, "What happens to me? I am responsible for centuries of suffering." "That is not for me to decide," So Young said. "Each world will choose how to deal with the past. Some may want trials, some may want truth commissions, some may choose forgiveness. The important thing is that they get to choose." "And what happens to you?" the Emperor asked. "Will you become the new ruler of the galaxy?" So Young laughed. "I have no interest in ruling anyone. I have seen what power does to people. I prefer to fight for freedom, not to control it. But the people look up to you," General Suho observed. "They follow your leadership." "They follow my example," So Young corrected. "There is a difference. A leader serves the people. A ruler makes the people serve them." As if to prove her point, representatives from dozens of worlds began arriving at the palace. They had not come to crown a new emperor, but to discuss how their worlds could work together as equals. So Young participated in these discussions, but she did not lead them. She was just one voice among many. Over the following weeks, the Free Alliance took shape. It was not a government, but a voluntary association of worlds that agreed to respect each other's independence while cooperating on trade, defense, and exploration. There were no taxes, no forced laws, and no emperor. Some worlds chose to join immediately. Others decided to wait and see how it worked. A few preferred to remain completely independent. All of these choices were respected. So Young kept her promise about not seeking power. She accepted the title of Protector, which meant she would help defend any world that was attacked, but she would not rule over anyone. Her ship, the Unbroken Spirit, became a symbol of hope as it traveled from world to world, helping to solve problems and protect the innocent. The last research facilities were closed and their victims healed. The torture chambers were turned into museums so that future generations would remember the cost of unchecked power. The galaxy began to heal from 1,000 years of authoritarian rule. Emperor Seok Jin chose to spend his remaining years working in one of these museums, telling visitors about the dangers of believing that some people have the right to control others. It was his way of trying to make up for the harm he had caused. On the first anniversary of the Empire's fall, So Young stood on the balcony of the former Imperial Palace, which had been converted into a meeting hall for the Free Alliance. Below her, people from hundreds of worlds celebrated together in the streets. The diversity was beautiful. Different species, different cultures, all united by their choice to be free. Minna and Wubin joined her on the balcony. They had become her closest advisors, but also her dearest friends. "You have come a long way from that laboratory table," Minna observed. "We all have," So Young replied. "But I think the most important thing I learned was that the opposite of being caged is not being in charge. The opposite of being caged is helping others to fly." Wubin smiled. "The former test subject who became a protector instead of an emperor. I think the galaxy likes this story better." So Young looked up at the stars, where ships from the Free Alliance carried trade, knowledge, and hope to every corner of the galaxy. Somewhere out there, people were making their own choices about how to live, what to build, and who to become. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still problems, still people who chose badly, but it was real, and it was free. And it was worth every moment of pain she had endured to make it possible. The girl who had survived the laboratory had become the woman who freed the galaxy. But more importantly, she had learned that true strength was not about being unbreakable. True strength was about healing after you break and helping others to heal too. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all.